And you're watching Paul Korn Bow Hunting Channel!
Hey everybody, it's Chris Larson from the Paul Korn Bow Hunting Channel. I'm with Paul Korn from the Paul Korn Bow Hunting Channel. We're going to talk one of Paul's favorite topics. I love talking about it. Sometimes I'll just bring this up when he's walking around just to get him fired up.
Yeah.
Because it's fun.
It works. It definitely works, yeah.
So this is a question a lot of people have. When we're hunting, do we keep the quiver on the bow or off the bow?
Me personally, I always have my quiver on the bow. And, this has been a debate that, it's kind of interesting because being in archery since 1988, of course, back when we first started, your quivers were always on your bow. Well, then we went through this phase, which really kind of caught on, where, you actually shoot more accurate with your quiver off the bow. And, but once again, archery is about give and take. It's about, every time you do something, you make a change one way, you do effect, it's all cause and effect, the whole thing. And I'll tell you what I don't like about having the quiver off the bow is just the fact that you don't have your bullets, we'll call your arrows bullets, accessible or handy. And there's a lot of times where a follow-up second shot is the difference between, filling your tag and not. And being able to grab that second arrow, and not have to be reaching around to get your quiver or knocking it off a branch or whatever. So it keeps everything together, and it just gives you your bullets nice and close. And I can tell you tons of stories of, just getting that second shot or missing. You miss a shot and the deer makes 3 jumps and stops, and you just slide an arrow out and boom, you're in it. Now, if you don't have your quiver, you're reaching for it. So I cannot really think of a good reason for not having your bullets on your bow and close and handy and accessible. So, but then of course people are going to say, well, but you're not as accurate. Well, it's kind of funny because I know back probably 10 years ago, of course I've always shot with my quiver on the bow. I've never taken it off. And I just, quite honestly, for hunting it sounded ridiculous to me. And anyways, there was always these duels between Chuck Adams and Randy Ulmer, and they'd be the pros and the cons. And actually it was interesting because they did a pro and con on quiver. Chuck Adams always had the side quiver. He never had his quiver on his bow. Randy Ulmer, he always shot with his quiver on the bow. And so they had this deal, and actually Randy went through and did this big test, and he actually shot groups out of a machine and shot them, just him being, a world-class shooter, and measured the sizes of his groups, the quiver, being full to being all the way empty, simulating a hunting situation where you actually got five arrows in your quiver and you get down to the last one and you're shooting your last one, how much of it, and it was so minimal, very, 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 very minimal. I always practice with my quiver full. And so, I'm assuming that, I'm hoping that everything's going to go good where I'm not going to have to get down to my last spots. But if I end up shooting if I do shoot a couple times or I've only got 2 or 3 in my quiver, it shoots just fine and I have my bullets all handy. So, I couldn't even imagine doing a spot and stalk hunt and you're stalking an animal and you don't have you're trying to find an arrow. You have your quiver on the bow. So I personally don't think it affects your accuracy, and I think it makes things more complicated because you got to keep track of your quiver. And I've seen example after example after example filming a turkey hunt a couple years ago, and we got in the blind and it was real cold and it started warming up during the day, and you're taking clothes off and you throw your jacket over the quiver, and 2 hours later a turkey comes in, you miss it, and now I got the guy fishing looking for arrows, whereas you should be is just standing there looking around what's up, and you're trying to find, because you separated to me it would be no different than taking your 30-06, putting the clip in it, ejecting a shell, then taking the clip back out and putting it in your pocket or laying it on the ground. Why would you do that? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So we've touched your nerve here.
Yeah.
I like to just get him fired up with this once in a while.
He knows how to do it too.
So when you're practicing,
Yes.
you practice with that quiver on.
Yes.
You put your arrows in a tube. You keep your arrows on the quiver and shoot them with them in the quiver.
Right on the quiver. Yeah. I usually when I'm shooting, I have 4 arrows in my quiver, and then I have my, if I have 5 arrows with field points, I'm basically shooting it like this. I shoot with 4 arrows in the quiver when I practice. It doesn't. I can mess around and I can shoot at long distance, and the difference between that and taking all the arrows out is really it's side weight. It potentially could have a little effect on it, but it's really never been significant. This one here's all full of blood.
Yeah, what happened there?
I don't know. I think I shot a bear. It's got black hair in it. My last hunt was a black bear hunt, and I used a race hypodermic, and and a gold tip arrow. It worked great, and my quiver was on the bow.
And your quiver was on the bow.
Yes.
Always ready to go again. So, I mean, is this something that you actually practice follow-up shots into? Pull back, shoot, grab another one quickly, and that's something that you could work on in your
It is, and I guess early in my career I did, and actually that's what my whole childhood was. Hurry up, second and third and fourth shots. But I mean, I think you think about that. You get you fire a shot, tunk, and something goes. I mean, you literally as quick as you can grab that, drop that in. Now you hook up and you're like, I mean, matter of fact, if you watch, there's a caribou hunt that I went on in Alaska, and I ended up. That's a really good example of a hunt where I shot this caribou and I wasn't sure how good. The first shot was like 40 yards, and I think I was a little bit high, and he ran out there and stopped and didn't know what was going on, and and you can see the cameras behind me filming everything, and I just ranged it, grabbed another arrow and shot it at like 70, and then just smoked it. But there's a case where that there's lots of reasons for taking second shots. I mean, obviously if you missed, and the bow is quiet and everything, and the deer, the turkey, or whatever, they don't know what's going on. I mean, I've had people have turkeys jump up on the decoy and they shoot and miss because it jumped down, and they just keep doing their thing. It's like, why not have your bullets handy? So there's, if you miss, and there's also for a follow-up shot. And a lot of times people say, well, I would never shoot 80 yards, and I'm like, well, that's probably a good idea. But if you shot it in the middle, a deer in the middle of the body, and it's standing out there at 80 yards.
Take a crack.
Well, yeah, why not try to get more holes in them, So that caribou is a real good example of why I like to shoot with that quiver on the bow.
Yeah, that's something that, just talking to you and talking to your big turkey partner, Al Escobedo, it seems like to be your guys' mantra in your turkey hunting, that if that turkey is still standing, we're just going to put as many arrows in as we can.
Yeah, and turkeys are really hard to anchor down, so we don't mess around. We keep going, and having the bullets right there on the bow makes it a lot easier.
Is there anything else about this setup and hunting with your quiver on that I didn't ask you about?
In some ways, I guess another advantage, if you were going to take it off and you're trying to convince yourself that it makes sense to take it off, one thing that I can say is that, like, when you lay the bow in your lap, when you have the quiver on, you've got the arrows that you're dealing with, so it seems to lay better one way or the other. So when the quiver is off the bow, it's maybe a little bit easier to put in your lap and maneuver around, and then hope that you don't need that second shot, because you're and some people pull an arrow out and they'll think, well, I've got it handy, but it's never really ever going to be as handy as having the bullets on the bow. And I know I call them bullets, but they're arrows, but I think that's one thing that could make it a little bit easier to handle the bull. But you get into late season and stuff like that, and it's cold, and your fingers are frozen. You're trying to get down at the end of the night. It's one less thing to have to mess with. Everything's compact, clean, neat. Makes it real easy. You keep your bullets, you keep your bow all together. It honestly really makes a lot of sense. And if you think that taking that off is going to make you go from tighten your groups way up like that, it's just really, honestly, it's not the case. It doesn't work like that. I think it just makes a lot of sense. And I would say that more people shoot with their quiver off the bow than on. And it's a trend that took off, and I don't really, like I said, I don't understand. That's why I get fired up about it, because I get people, why is your quiver on your bow? It's like, well, because I like to kill stuff.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of bow or quiver manufacturers now, they actually put the hook on there for you to hang up.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like you say, it kind of takes you out of your game, but for some reason that's kind of in vogue thing to do now.
It is, and that's the route that people have gone, and I really strongly, disagree with removing your quiver. I don't think it's really a very, hunter-wise thing to do,
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Chris.